You're watching News 3 Now, live at 4, moving forward.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Live at 4. Good to have you with us on this Thursday. We begin with breaking news. The Mount Horeb man charged with accidentally shooting and killing his friend with an AR-15 will go to prison for 5 years.
Isaiah Miller originally pleaded not guilty to 2 charges stemming from a shooting in May of 2022 that killed a 19-year-old. He later pleaded guilty to one of the charges, and the judge dismissed the other. A criminal complaint alleges Miller admitted to officers he was on drugs when he accidentally shot his friend. After serving 5 years, he'll get 5 years of supervision. The judge says there will be no early release and restitution will be determined later.
Representatives in our local government are trying to convince the state to take action on gun reform.
Merrill Hubbard is back from the state capitol to show us how local leaders are pushing for gun safety.
Dane County board members, legislatures, and community advocates are calling for more gun safety in the county through Resolution 308, or what they call common sense gun reform.
Here we are once again asking the legislature to do the right thing by our kids, to save their lives.
Senator Kelder Royce took the stand for 2024 Resolution 308, which pushes state legislatures to pass reforms like red flag laws, universal background checks, and enhanced safety measures for gun control. The resolution states 741 people die and more than 1,600 are hurt by guns in an average year in Wisconsin. Patrick Miles, Dane County Board Chair, says that this resolution will not solve all problems leading to gun violence, but that it would save lives.
Adding tragedy upon tragedy is the infuriating fact that Wisconsin's Republican leadership refuses to implement these tools, these reforms. This shouldn't be a partisan issue.
State law currently blocks the county from having more gun restrictions compared to the state. At the meeting, Senator Kelder Royce said that gun reform bills have been introduced year after year, but that Republicans in the legislature historically throw them out.
Merrill, thank you. The board will vote on Resolution 308 at a meeting tonight at 7 o'clock.
And let's get a look at our first warn forecast. Meteorologist Blaze Keller is outside on the patio. Big difference from yesterday, Blaze.
Yeah, plenty of sunshine out here. We're going to continue to sit underneath these quiet conditions for the next several hours, but we're getting ready for another round of snow as we look ahead to Friday. That snow is going to move in starting after the midnight hour and last throughout most of your Friday, wrapping up in the late afternoon, leaving us mostly with an inch or less. Folks north of Madison, Dane County, you might not even see a half an inch of snow. But Janesville, parts of Grant County, Platteville, Greene County, you're kind of getting the gist here. Along the Wisconsin-Illinois border, you're going to have the better chance to get between 1 to 2 inches of that snow, and that's set to arrive, as I said, starting after midnight and throughout most of your Friday afternoon. In the meantime, plenty of quiet conditions. Skies are going to eventually turn partly cloudy as we head into the evening, and then eventually mostly cloudy as we go overnight into those early morning hours on Friday. But most of us will not see any snow until the mid-morning hours onwards. So we'll hang out in the upper 20s to low 30s tonight. We are going to talk more in depth about this round of snow set to arrive on Friday, and then the nice warm up, the 60s, when they return in the full forecast.
Thank you, Blaze. A group of Madison voters is suing the city after their ballots were not counted during last November's election.
Political reporter Will Keneally has more on what they're asking for.
This lawsuit stems from the 193 City of Madison ballots that went missing during last year's election and were never counted. Now, 4 of those voters are suing the city on behalf of all 193, claiming that Madison deprived them of their right to vote. Now, we spoke with the legal team representing them earlier today.
And historically, when Wisconsinites have been denied the right to vote, they have filed lawsuits seeking damages from the municipalities responsible. Our work here follows that tradition.
Now, each of those 193 voters are asking for $175,000 in damages for their votes not being counted. And tomorrow, the Wisconsin Elections Commission will meet to decide on how to move forward after the city of Madison misplaced those ballots.
Thank you, Will. And this is a live look at the nation's capital, where Republicans are considering a budget that calls for major spending slashes. An analysis this week by the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office says the GOP plan could not be reached without reducing spending on Medicaid, clashing with the commitments from Republicans who say they won't touch the entitlement program. If Republicans are successful with their budget plans, millions of Americans could have their benefits taken away.
And that includes more than 1 million Wisconsinites. Sarah Carlson has been speaking with some of those enrollees. She joins us now ahead of a special report airing tonight at 6 on this matter. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Susan and Brady. Thank you so much for having me. And I invited a panel of people with disabilities and parents of those with disabilities to just talk more about what's at stake here. And they actually fear the public is confused about what might happen if the Senate passes the bill that went through the House just last week. Now, we're being told by President Trump and others in his administration that they won't touch Medicaid, but more and more nonpartisan studies are showing that Medicaid is on the chopping block if this passes.
And what Medicaid is a big umbrella for a lot of things. What kind of services are we talking about?
It is a very big umbrella, and one that if we had 20 minutes we could go over it, but it's everything from health care and caregiver services. For one of our interviewees, Tyler Engel, he, despite being in a wheelchair since the age of 3, has been independent since 18. So thanks to Medicaid, he was able to go to college, to work, and qualifies for access to caregivers for pretty much 24-hour care. Now, there's another program called IRIS. Now, this helps disabled adults manage their lives. So job coaches, those people are there with them on the job, helping them find work and helping them keep on track and learn and remain independent.
Yeah, and it's great that you are reaching out to individuals who are affected by this. So what are they feeling? How are people feeling?
You know, it's not, again, just the disabled. It's children. It's people who are in nursing homes. But people are scared. They're scared of the
uncertainty.
There's a lot of uncertainty. We know it could pass. We know it might not. But what we hear from one side is that we won't touch this. But when the research is done, it's a pretty scary outcome in the end.
Well, and you also spoke with Congressman Mark Pocan,
exactly,
who will be in the position to vote on this one way or the other.
Right.
What's his perspective?
Well, he says we need to be speaking out more, and that's actually when I say to him and the whole panel and everyone I've talked to is learn more and speak out, make a phone call to your legislators.
Very important issue. It airs tonight at 6.
Thank you.
We'll see you then. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks.
Well, next on Live at 4, what a first-of-its-kind report on assault within the Wisconsin National Guard shows us.
Plus, the bill that legislators are considering that could change transgender kids' lives at Wisconsin schools. More breaking news this afternoon. The Washington Post is reporting another person has died from the measles.
It marks the second death from the growing outbreak in the U.S. The person who died was from New Mexico and was unvaccinated. It comes after a child died last week from the measles, an unvaccinated 6-year-old.
As the federal government seeks to determine the rights of transgender youth at school, the conversation returns to Wisconsin.
Today, the Assembly Committee on Education heard 2 bills relating to trans youth. Ellie LaLiberte was there and shows us what supporters and critics of the proposed legislation are saying.
The public gets to weigh in on these 2 bills. The first barring transgender athletes from competing in women's sports in both public and private schools and would apply to locker rooms as well. And the other would require parental consent to change a student's name or pronouns.
Say now, we've got some obviously contentious, emotional bills today.
Standing room only Thursday morning as people filled the hearing room, largely in opposition of the 2 bills before the committee.
This legislation will shape the school environments in Wisconsin, forcing teachers to withhold basic respect from trans students who may be already struggling with a lack of acceptance at home or whose family can't afford or don't know how to navigate a legal name change.
Taking hours to get through the list of speakers wanting to voice their opinion.
Transitioning and changing your name is a major life choice, is something parents should be involved in.
Now, this is still an early process before these bills could become law. However, they face an almost certain veto from Democratic Governor Tony Evers if they pass in both chambers of the legislature, but they have yet to be voted on in either. Reporting at the state capitol, Ellie LaLiberte, News 3 Now.
Thank you, Ellie. This legislation is also not new. Legislators introduced both bills last session, but they were unsuccessful.
The president's pick to lead the U.S. Food and Drug Administration says if confirmed as the agency's commissioner, he'll take a look at mifepristone. Appearing before senators today, Dr. Martin McCary said he'd create an expert coalition to review data on the abortion pill. The FDA approved the pill more than 20 years ago. It's been proven to be safe and effective. In 2024, the Supreme Court rejected a lawsuit that sought to make the medication harder to access. In Wisconsin, you can only get mifepristone after multiple in-person visits with the same physician. The Senate will vote on confirming McCary next Thursday.
As we mark 5 years since the COVID-19 virus swept across the world, doctors and scientists say they're still learning a lot about long COVID. New research sheds light on who is most likely to suffer from the condition. A study published in January found women have a 31% higher risk of developing long COVID than men. The risk is even higher, 45% for women ages 40 to 54 who have not been through menopause.
Symptoms of long COVID include tiredness or fatigue that interferes with daily life, headaches, sleep problems, stomach pain, and much more. It's hard to pin down because more than 200 symptoms have been identified. The symptoms can emerge, persist, resolve, and reemerge over weeks and months. No laboratory test can determine if your symptoms or conditions are due to long COVID. If you think you have the condition, talk to your doctor. There are also resources available on the CDC's website.
A first-of-its-kind report is out this afternoon that addresses sexual violence in the Wisconsin National Guard.
It's part of a response from the National Guard to a report more than 5 years ago on its sexual assault reporting procedures. It shows an increase in assault cases and inquiries into its Assault Prevention and Response Office over the last few years.
The National Guard says the increase in reports does not necessarily mean more assaults are happening. It may be reflective of what they call a cultural shift within its ranks due to an increase in trust. And joining us now to talk about the findings, Dana Pellebon is the Executive Director of the Dane County Sexual Violence Resource Center. Dana, nice to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on.
So what is your reaction to hearing that this is the first report about sexual violence in Wisconsin's National Guard?
Well, I'm very grateful that they are reporting out what it is that is happening. Sometimes there's been a culture of silence around sexual violence, and making sure that people understand what is happening in the community, what is happening in our National Guard is a really big step forward. So I'm very grateful that they are now releasing numbers.
Yeah, and in the report, the Guard says the increase in assaults and inquiries into prevention and response could be due to a cultural shift. What do you think is contributing to that?
So yes, there is a cultural shift throughout our community, but also the National Guard has put some resources to making sure it happens. So there is a person there that works very closely with victims. Her name is Kelly, and she is a part of their program to make sure that victims know what avenues they have in space. They just had a conference for the very first time just last week. And that was put together by their programs to make sure that everybody in the National Guard understands what is necessary, what options are available to victims that are both civilian and active duty, and those that are in the Guard. So they are really working hard to make sure that there is information out there because, again, we know that a lot of these conversations have not been happening concentratedly over the years. So to see these conversations moving forward when we have people who are in the National Guard who have been working on this for a really long time is very heartening.
Is there anything that was not included in the report that you wish was?
So no, I mean, I have to say it's a really comprehensive report. It even has outcomes in the report of the cases that were that were identified. The thing that we want to make sure of is that more people are hearing that there are options. Just because you are in our armed forces does not mean that you have to accept perpetration. And so being able to see that, one, they're being transparent, that's also going to go a long way for people feeling comfortable saying, this is what happened to me and this is how we're going to move forward.
Well, Dana, thank you so much for being on with us to talk about this topic.
We appreciate your time, Dana. Thank you.
Thank you.
And let's get a look at our first warn forecast. We had a taste of winter yesterday and a tiny little taste of spring today.
Now spring has arrived.
And then we're getting ready for another taste of winter here as we get ready to end the weekend, the work week. Another chance for some light snow, generally staying an inch or less in accumulation, set to arrive later tonight, early Friday, and last through most of the afternoon. Then we're into the 60s by next week. We're into that point in the year where we're going to get some of these cooler days. We may even see some snow, but because the jet stream is moving further north for summer, we then warm on up. So let's focus on that chance for snow as we go into your Friday. Likely going to begin across southwestern parts of Wisconsin as we head over the midnight hour through the early morning hours on Friday. And then we're going to continue to watch as that essentially this low pressure system moves its way through Missouri, but that snow is really going to hug the Wisconsin-Illinois border. And as we head into the mid-afternoon, we're beginning to wind down, maybe seeing some of that transition back over to a rain or a rain-snow mix before ending as we go into that 8, 9, maybe as early as 7 o'clock time frame. So this is a very quick moving system. Let's bring it even closer so that we can really see what we're dealing with here. It's not going to be a heavy snow, but it is going to be anywhere between an inch to upwards of 2 inches along the state line. But folks north of Dane County, even north of the Dells, you're likely not going to see much, if any, snow accumulation. It's all going to be hugging the state line. And as I mentioned, afternoon temperatures could turn that back over to a rain-snow mix before we start to wrap up. We're looking at 6 o'clock future track on Friday. We're beginning to wrap up with some lingering light snow or some flurries across southeastern parts of our forecast area. Everybody else is dry at this point. As I mentioned, anywhere between 1 to 2 inches of snow, but I think that's going to be closer to that 1 inch mark as we go into your Friday afternoon. Folks north of Madison, north of the Dells even, you're likely not going to see upwards of an inch. You're probably going to hang out between 3/4 of an inch or less of snow because most of that moisture is being pulled down further south. National Weather Service is not likely going to be issuing any winter weather advisories. So again, that really tells me and for you guys at home that they're not anticipating much in the way of impacts from this. Obviously, the roads are going to be slick, especially during your morning commute and possibly during your evening commute as well, but we're not anticipating breezy conditions or a lot of snow to really impact your day. But we just got off of some snow here, so let's take a look at some of these totals really quick. Horicon picking up 2.5 inches, Beaver Dam just over 1.5 inches. Beloit, we only picked up 1/2 inch of snow with that wintry mess. Upper 30s to low 40s for your Friday and average temperatures to end the work week, and we're back into the 60s with sunny conditions by Monday.
Just a roller coaster of a time here.
That's March.
Oh, here we go. 60s sound great, though. Well, coming up, Dane by Local kicks off its Thrive and Shine breakfast series.
Our Josh Spreiter shows us the opportunities it's giving local businesses in the 608 when we come back. Sorry, we weren't able to get Josh Spreiter's story. We're having a little bit of a technical problem, but it is posted on our website, channel3000.com, if you want to take a look. From Wisconsin to the Hollywood box office, a local filmmaker is making his big screen feature film debut with some big stars and an even bigger message for veterans.
My Dead Friend Zoe is a dark comedy drama that follows the journey of Merritt, a U.S. Army Afghanistan veteran who is navigating her relationship with her Army vet grandfather, her counselor, and the presence of her friend Zoe, who is dead, her dead best friend from the Army. Here's a clip.
But you're calling an accident. The courts call them criminal negligence.
Nobody died.
Nobody died. What? Merritt, I know you think you're above this, but Courage is moving forward. It's not being unmoved. What is it that you are so afraid to talk about?
I think you recognize that guy, Morgan Freeman. Well, My Dead Friend Zoe is in theaters now, and it stars Sonequa Martin Green, Natalie Morales, Ed Harris, and Morgan Freeman. It's written and directed by Kyle Hausman-Stokes, who is from Verona. I talked with Hausman-Stokes, a veteran of the Iraq War himself, about the semi-autobiographical film. He says he wanted to tell his story of what he calls his post-traumatic growth journey and share a broader view of veterans.
I wanted to show people that we veterans are more than the extremes. We're not all just super soldier Navy SEALs or broken and drunk and angry. Most of us live somewhere in the middle, and yeah, that's what I wanted to communicate with the film.
My Dead Friend Zoe is in theaters, including our local theaters here, and next week I'll show you a more in-depth conversation about the film. It's really a love letter to Wisconsin and two of Hausman-Stokes' platoon mates. I got to see it to prepare for that interview. Highly recommend.
Oh, we're looking forward to seeing that, and it's great to see a local person, you know, get big A-list stars in an independent film. That's exciting.
I asked him, like, directing Ed Harris and Morgan Freeman, were you ever like, how did this happen?
Right.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to seeing that. Thank you, Brady. Coming up on Live at 4, how Madison's community is remembering Tony Robinson 10 years after his death.
And later, the actions President Trump is considering that could change education across the country.
Watching News 3 Now, live at 4.
Well, we have a nice little break from yesterday's winter weather, and some people are making the most out of the ice while they still have it.
It's disappearing quickly.
It's kind of scary to see.
It is a little bit. You know that phrase, wait 5 minutes in Wisconsin and the weather will change? That's today. But more light snow is expected on Friday. Yesterday, when I was driving home, Blaze, my windshield wiper flew off.
Oh, no.
My windshield.
Oh my gosh.
When the snow was coming down and it was icy and rainy. And now today, it feels like spring.
Yeah, I mean, other than maybe some lingering snow on the ground, you really wouldn't know that yesterday we had the snow, and then the day before that we had the rain, and we had a nice break today, and now we're getting ready for another round of snow expected to begin after midnight through the early morning hours on Friday, picking up most widespread starting in the late morning through at least the mid-afternoon hours on Friday. You're seeing it there on Future Track, and then as we head into this time tomorrow, we're beginning to wrap on up. And we should be saying goodbye to this system by about 8, 9, 10 o'clock on your Friday. In the meantime, upper 30s to low 40s on this Thursday. It is beautiful, it is sunny, and most of us are able to at least get into the upper 30s to low 40s, not only in Dane County, but across southern Wisconsin. It's 41 in Verona as well as in Belleville. We'll continue to sit underneath these clear to mostly clear conditions through the next several hours. Beginning, I would say, about 10 o'clock onwards, we turn partly cloudy, then mostly cloudy as we get ready for that snow. We're going to talk about the snow as well as a warm-up, how warm will stay in the full forecast.
All right, Blaze, thank you. Today marks 10 years since Madison police officer Matt Kenney shot and killed 19-year-old Tony Robinson.
Well, the incident gained national attention and led to massive protests in Madison. Our Tanasia Shaw is live at a memorial service. Tanasia, what can you tell us?
Yeah, 10 years later, and the community is continuing to mourn Tony Robinson. There's a lot planned today. Right now, I am at Cafe Coda. This is a Jump on the Mic for Justice event. I'm going to let you get a look at it. It's just now getting underway, but what you're seeing right now is family and friends watching the documentary on the coverage, actually some of ours that we covered back in 2015 on Robinson's death, And later tonight, there will be a candlelight vigil where Robinson died. We're going to put up some video of you of the dash cam video from a squad car showing Madison police officer Matt Kenney entering a home on Willie Street and shooting Robinson in 2015. The white officer shot Robinson, a 19-year-old black man, after responding to a call. Reports from the State Department of Justice says Kenney shot Robinson 7 times. Robinson was not armed. As of right now, Kenney is cleared from any wrongdoings connecting to Robinson's death. Again, back in 2015, this case sparked protests here in Madison. And 10 years later, family told me they are continuing to seek justice. And again, right now, this event is underway and we're waiting for people to fill the room. I talked to Robinson's grandmother and she told me that they're expecting artists. They're also having an art tribute later on, a candlelight vigil, and more. I'll be at all those events and I'll have that coverage throughout the evening. Susan and Brady, back to you.
Thank you, Tanasia. Well, senators, including some Republicans, are warning President Trump against dismantling the Department of Education. Earlier today, reports swirled of an executive order directing the Education Secretary to begin the process of dismantling the agency. The White House press secretary says the president won't be signing the order today. It's unclear when he could sign it.
Leaders at UW-Madison are sounding the alarm in a letter to lawmakers about what research and operations could be lost if they experience any cuts to federal funding from the National Institutes of Health.
Arman Rahman was at the event where they say they're forced to plan for a variety of futures.
Administrators at the University of Wisconsin-Madison appealing now to lawmakers, saying any cuts to NIH funding jeopardize not just the future of their students and staff, but the lives that are saved beyond the laboratory.
Taking a meat cleaver to this funding is simply wrong.
For the first time, UW Systems President Jay Rothman and UW-Madison Chancellor Jennifer Mnuchin speaking out publicly about what would happen if the UW system faced cuts to its largest source of federal funding. In 2023, Wisconsin institutions received $654 million in NIH dollars. Mnuchin says recent proposals also call to cut facilities and administration funding, which covers essential costs like lab space, regulatory compliance, and patient protections that NIH won't fund directly.
These cuts harm our ability to make critical life-saving discoveries and to train our students to be global leaders. They will also damage our nation's innovation economy and our international competitiveness.
Work at UW's Alzheimer's Research Center has also been largely funded by NIH contributions. Each year, more than 20,000 patients participate in clinical trials for treatments here. And last year, the center led a groundbreaking national study into the causes of Alzheimer's and dementia through brain imaging. And there's another researcher here at UW who's on the verge of a major breakthrough in another neurological disorder, epilepsy. But now that's all on hold due to the uncertainty of his funding. I'll have more from him tonight at 6. For now, reporting in Madison, Arman Rahman, News 3 Now.
We will see you at 6, Armand. Thank you. Tomorrow, the Bureau of Labor Statistics will release its February jobs report. Researchers are expecting a major spike in layoffs due to cuts the Department of Government Efficiency is making, and that could shake the stock market. Earlier, the president granted an exemption to some Canadian goods and most goods from Mexico for a month. All of this following the enactment of tariffs on Tuesday that sent stocks plunging and the announcement of an exemption for automakers.
The on-again, off-again nature of the tariffs is worrying Wall Street. The Dow lost 428 points, the Nasdaq dropped 483 points, and the S&P 500 is down 104 points. The University of Wisconsin-Madison Police Department has a new leader. Brent Plish will be the UWPD's new chief. He currently holds the interim police chief position. He previously served as the assistant chief for administration and support before becoming a police officer. Plish served as a captain in the Army. UWPD has been without an official chief since February last year, when then police chief Kristen Roman resigned. She made that choice ahead of a completion of an investigation and report into allegations of violating UW's employment policies. In a statement, Plish says under his leadership, he will strive to create an environment where students, faculty, staff, and community members feel safe. He will officially become chief on March 16th.
But still to come today on Live at 4, the April election is just around the corner.
Charles Franklin drops by for a deep dive into his most recent poll and what it means for the Supreme Court and superintendent races.
Welcome back. With less than a month to go now before an election that could flip the state Supreme Court's ideological swing, a new poll from Marquette Law School finds most registered voters don't have much of an opinion on both candidates.
Well, the same is true for the candidates to be the state's superintendent, who leads the Department of Public Instruction. And joining us now for a deeper dive into those numbers, the director of the poll, Charles Franklin.
Hi, Charles.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So with the Supreme Court, we can start there. There's no head-to-head matchup in the polls. Why not?
Well, you'll see it in this next answer. 38% say they don't know enough about Brad Schimel to have an opinion. Over 50% say the same about his opponent, Susan Crawford. So when you ask people how they're going to vote 4 weeks away, when that high a percentage really don't feel familiar with the candidate, it may be good for clickbait, but it's not very informative about where the race is or where it will end up. So we asked favorability to each candidate, which gives you a sense of how people feel about them, but the big part of that, the big takeaway, is from a third to a half or more don't have opinions of these folks yet.
They're both currently judges, but is that a little surprising because Brad Schimel was the Attorney General? Does that give him, is it surprising that more people don't know who he is?
It is and it isn't. He is the best known of them, so I think you do see a little advantage. But I went back and looked at our questions about him when he was Attorney General, and even then it was in the 40% range that didn't have an opinion. That's not about Brad Schimel, it's about the Office of Attorney General. The same holds for Josh Kaul today.
Interesting.
It's a very important office, but it's out of the public eye a lot, and people just don't pay attention enough to know how they feel about the Attorney General, whoever it is. So it may be a little advantage to Schimel, but it's not like he was building off a super high base when he was AG.
Well, since people are kind of not super familiar with these two candidates, how does that influence how they feel about the race in general?
And there you see the opposite side of this story. Just over 80% know that this is a race that can determine the ideological balance on the court between liberal and conservative. So they're quite aware of the stakes in the race in that sense. And about 50% say they're very concerned about the outcome of the race. And to put the turnout side in perspective, we set a record in 2023 with about 50% of registered voters voting in that Supreme Court race. But last November, it was about 88% of registered voters. So spring elections are always lower turnout than fall elections. That's another part of this. We will see a much smaller electorate on April 1st, even if, like in 23, it breaks or comes close to breaking records for spring turnout.
What about in the race for superintendent?
Well, there, both candidates are even less well known. Over 60% not familiar with Joe Underly, and over 70% not familiar with Kinzer. When we push that to people who are sure they're going to vote and very interested in the race, those numbers come down, but they're still close to 50% not familiar with either. The one other thing is we do ask favorable and unfavorable, but for the two Supreme Court candidates, they're almost evenly balanced, a +1 or a -1. For the DPI race, it's I think -2 for Underly, and the one exception, a +11 or so for Kinzer. But she's the least well known, but of those that do know her, she has the most likes.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. When it comes to some of the issues with education, what are people saying about those? The achievement gap, for example.
What we see is people have opinions about education. About 58% say they're satisfied with the job the schools are doing in their community. But when you ask them about test scores, whether it's math or English or reading or the achievement gap, close to half say they don't know how their schools are doing. And they just simply don't know whether test scores are gone up or gone down over the last 5 years. Been a lot of talk and coverage about that topic, but lots of us don't follow that closely. So on the one hand, we're asking people to make decisions about schools, and they have opinions about them. 60% say our standards are too low, but then 40 to 50% say they don't know on these objective tests how the schools are doing. So there's a real divergence there between what we want and what we know.
Yeah. Very interesting.
It's always fascinating to see how people are thinking and feeling and reflecting in the poll. Charles, good to see you.
Thank you.
And you, thank you.
We'll see you soon. All right, we'll be right back.
That is a beautiful shot of a place I've never been. Have you ever been to Lake of the Ozarks?
I've watched the TV show Ozark before, but that's the closest I've been.
Little cloudy, 45 degrees at Lake Ozark in Missouri.
Not quite swimming weather there or here for that matter. Here's Blaze Keller with our first warn forecast.
And we are tracking another round of some light snow set to arrive beginning after midnight going into early parts of Friday morning. The best chance for snow is going to be starting in the late morning through the mid-afternoon, and then we wind down on that and get ready for some 60s as we kick off next week. So it'll make returning to work after this weekend maybe just a little bit better. There's that snow beginning to impact southwestern parts of Wisconsin as we go into the 3 o'clock hour Friday morning. And then, as I said, going into the late morning hours through the mid-afternoon, that's when most of us will likely see the light to moderate snowfall across a majority of southern Wisconsin. And even though the blue is starting to get up to the Dells, folks at the Dells or north probably won't see a lot in the way of any snowfall, as most of this moisture is staying off to our south. As we head into this time frame tomorrow, we're beginning to wind down. By 6:30, Future Track already has a lot of southern Wisconsin on the dry side. And this is going to be about 1 to 2 inches of snow further to the south. Further to the north of Dane County, that's where we're looking at less than an inch in total accumulation. This is likely going to impact your morning and possibly the beginning of your evening commute, but especially the late morning commute if you have to drive to work, you're going to be running into this snow. So keep that in mind as we're beginning to plan out our Friday. Upper 30s to low 40s to end the work week, fairly seasonal. Again, further south, more cloud cover, and that chance for that light to moderate snowfall. Then, as I mentioned, going into next week, we are starting it off in the 60s. We're sitting at a 40 to 50 and even 60 to 70% chance of staying warmer than average towards the end of our extended forecast. This is from March 12th through the 16th. And if we extend that out even further, we do start to maybe trend more normal for this time of year. So taking into account that the graphic just before this was taking the last few days of our extended forecast, you can see every single day except for 2, our forecast highs are going to be on the warmer than normal side. So we are going to be sitting underneath these warmer temperatures at least for the next 10 days. Beyond that, we'll just have to take it day by day. But there's no strong indication that we're set to cool on down or on the flip side of that, warm, that much hotter. So we're going to enjoy these temperatures while they're here. Upper 30s to low 40s on Friday. That chance for snow, as I said, pretty much sticking around all day. Further north, you're going to probably miss out on some of that snow. 40s on Saturday, staying quiet. 50s on Sunday, a bit breezy, maybe a scattered rain shower, but most of us will stay dry. And then 60s Monday, Tuesday, 50s Wednesday, Thursday, and then 60s Friday and Saturday. That late week system is something we're going to keep an eye on as well, but it could warm us up before we're back into the 40s to end that weekend.
And we have some more breaking news.
A deadly crash this afternoon is impacting traffic on Raymond Road and South Gammon Road. We've confirmed that one person, an adult, has died. The status of 2 children involved in this crash is unknown. Now, this happened just after 4 this afternoon. We'll have much more information on this story throughout our newscasts right here on News 3 Now and always online at channel3000.com. We'll be right back. Tomorrow on Live at 4, Josh Spreiter has 3 things for you and your family to do this weekend in the 608. Coming up later tonight on News 3 Now at 6, the faces of Medicaid. Sarah Carlson shares stories of Wisconsinites who could be impacted by cuts to the federal program. Her special report airs tonight on News Now at 6. Thanks for joining us for Live at 4 on this Thursday afternoon. We hope to see you right back here tomorrow. News 3 Now at 5 starts right after this.